What was it truly like to live in Britain during the 1960s? Not the headlines or the big historical events, but the subtle, everyday details. The click of a gas fire warming a cold morning, the smell of toast and dripping filling the kitchen, and the steady hum of the black and white television as families gathered around it. It was a decade of immense change, yes, but also one imbued with surprising warmth and familiarity. Streets felt safer, neighbors knew your name, and the milkman still made his rounds faithfully. Children played outdoors until the streetlights flickered on, their laughter echoing down quiet lanes. Radios crackled with the latest hits from the Beatles, the Kinks, and other emerging bands, and for the first time in decades, people began to believe life could actually improve. This is a journey back into that world, revealing 15 everyday truths about 1960s Britain. Moments that show not only how people lived, but how they dreamed and hoped. From fashion revolutions and music revolutions to simple Friday night fish and chips, this is the Britain many recall fondly and others wish they could have experienced firsthand. If this content speaks to you, don't let the story end here. Leave a comment, join the conversation, and help us keep these voices alive. Subscribe for more journeys through time, and together, let's ensure these cities are never forgotten. Without further ado, let's continue. After years of rationing and post-war austerity, British families began to feel a real shift in their quality of life. Comfort, color, and convenience slowly crept into daily routines. Real wages had risen nearly 40% between 1950 and 1965, making appliances, furniture, and even seaside holidays achievable for the working class. A washing machine, a television, or a modest car no longer seemed like distant dreams. Supermarkets started to replace the corner shops, carpeted floors became increasingly common, and households began to embrace life rather than merely survive. It was still modest by today's standards, but optimism filled the air. People took pride in progress, in saying, "We've come a long way," and for many, it genuinely felt like the best days were just beginning. The 1960s didn't only bring a post-war revival in everyday life, they unleashed a cultural explosion, particularly in music. From Liverpool's pubs to Soho's clubs, the British invasion changed the world. Bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, The Who, and the Kinks didn't merely top charts, they redefined youth, swagger, and style. London became the epicenter of this movement, sending a tidal wave of sound, attitude, and energy across the globe. Teenagers finally had heroes of their own, voices that resonated with them, and a style uniquely theirs. Music became a badge of identity rather than mere entertainment. Alongside it came mods on scooters, miniskirts, Carnaby street fashion, and the exhilarating sense that anything was possible. Britain had transformed from post-war grayness to a cultural powerhouse, powered by guitars, confidence, and a newfound global relevance. Fashion, too, roared loudly during this decade. London streets, especially Carnaby Street and King's Road, became impromptu catwalks, showcasing youthful rebellion and audacity. Designers like Mary Quant shocked and inspired with the introduction of the miniskirt, empowering a generation of young women to redefine beauty and expression. Twiggy's wide-eyed, androgynous look captured the imagination of the nation, symbolizing a modern, fearless youth. Color exploded across streets. Neon tights, daring patterns, and bold combinations challenged every previous notion of style. Clothes no longer whispered social status. They shouted personality, energy, and attitude. For millions of British youths, what they wore finally reflected how they felt. Free, bold, and ready to embrace the future. Television had already started reshaping everyday life by the early 1960s. Roughly 80% of households owned a television, usually a small black and white set, proudly positioned in the corner of the living room. Watching TV became a shared experience, a daily ritual. Families gathered to watch the news, the Queen's Christmas broadcast, or popular programs like Coronation Street. Children rushed home for Blue Peter, while adults enjoyed shows like Steptoe and Son. Television was communal, simple, and profoundly connecting. The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953 had already hinted at this shared experience, But by the 1960s, the medium had fully established itself as the centerpiece of domestic life, allowing the nation to witness its own transformation in real time. Dinner tables in 1960s Britain were modest yet comforting. Most families cooked on tight budgets, sticking to simple, hearty meals. There were no international food aisles, no exotic spices, just meat and vegetables, beans on toast, fish fingers, and Sunday roasts when possible. Lunchboxes contained cheese or corned beef sandwiches and always a portion of crisps. Tea was strong, milky, and omnipresent. Dishes like rice or garlic were considered exotic, pasta a curiosity, and tinned spaghetti hoops a rare indulgence. Despite their simplicity, meals provided warmth, sustenance, and a sense of shared community. Recipes passed from one generation to the next, creating continuity and comfort in everyday life. Food wasn't about presentation, it was about gathering together, filling stomachs, and nurturing the spirit. Education began to shift as well. The rigid, selective grammar school system gradually gave way to comprehensive schools designed to serve all children, regardless of background. More young people remained in school beyond the age of 15, while the notion of higher education became less of an elite privilege and more of a potential path for working-class families. Classrooms filled with chalk dust, the voices of teachers, and the occasional BBC school broadcast. Expectations slowly changed, giving children the sense that the future wasn't something to merely endure, it was something to shape. For the first time, many students believed they could step beyond the careers of their parents, dreaming of work in offices, journalism, civil service, or other emerging sectors that symbolized modern Britain. Jobs in the 1960s reflected the nation's transformation. While factories, mines, and agriculture still dominated some regions, new opportunities emerged in offices, retail, and public administration. Women increasingly entered the workforce, sparking gradual social change and challenging long-held expectations. The suit and tie began replacing caps and overalls, and lifelong careers in a single factory became less certain. Strikes and industrial unrest were still common, but a sense of progress and possibility pervaded society. Young people began to envision careers rather than simply jobs, imagining futures shaped by choice, ambition, and creativity rather than necessity alone. The decade also laid the groundwork for social equality. The idea that men and women deserved equal pay for equal work gained traction, with women increasingly organizing and advocating for their rights in workplaces ranging from factories to schools. Although the Equal Pay Act would not pass until 1970, the 1960s were pivotal in challenging long-standing norms and inspiring generations to reconsider the value of fairness, equity, and opportunity. Progress was slow, but the rebellious, forward-looking spirit of the era made the question impossible to ignore. Domestic life was slowly transformed by technology and convenience. Indoor bathrooms became increasingly common, reducing the reliance on shared or outdoor facilities. Kettles, metal tubs, and buckets gave way to running hot water, while washing machines and vacuum cleaners gradually lightened household labor. By the mid-1960s, around 60% of homes had a washing machine, freeing up time for rest and leisure. Television sets became central to home life, transforming living rooms into spaces of entertainment and relaxation. These small improvements dramatically altered the rhythm of daily life, making routines easier and giving families more opportunities to enjoy their time together. The NHS, too, became a cornerstone of life in 1960s Britain. Universal, free healthcare brought reassurance and security to every citizen, regardless of income or background. Maternity wards, clinics, and home visits by doctors and nurses created a sense of trust and stability that was revolutionary in a country still emerging from post-war austerity. The NHS symbolized the quiet yet profound progress of the era, caring for the population and providing a safety net for generations to come. Youth culture exploded in this period. Mods zipped through city streets on Vespas, sharp-suited and fashion-forward, while rockers roared along motorways clad in leather, revering Elvis and rock and roll. Their clashes, most famously on Brighton and Margate beaches, became emblematic of a generational divide, sparking both fascination and moral panic. Yet beneath the surface of these conflicts, young people were asserting their independence, experimenting with identity, style, and self-expression in ways their parents had never imagined. These subcultures were more than aesthetics. They were declarations of freedom, autonomy, and youthful power. Meanwhile, Britain was reckoning with its post-imperial identity. The 1960s saw the dissolution of the British Empire as former colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean gained independence, forming the Commonwealth. This shift was as symbolic as it was practical, prompting reflection on Britain's place in the world. News bulletins delivered reports of new nations, flags, and leaders, subtly reshaping the collective consciousness. The empire that had once dictated global affairs was transforming into a network of partnerships based on respect rather than domination, a process that forced Britain to redefine itself both politically and culturally. The 1960s weren't merely a decade, they were a feeling. Streets felt closer, communities tighter, and life infused with hope and possibility. We've explored everyday life: coal fires, scooters, music that changed the world, incremental social reforms, and subtle technological improvements. The era was modest, yet brimming with quiet strength, resilience, and optimism. Britain wasn't perfect, but it was alive, adapting, and looking forward. Those who lived through it remember it fondly, not necessarily for material abundance, but for the spirit of connection, courage, and communal life. It's a decade that still resonates today, reminding us that progress, hope, and warmth often exist in the small, everyday moments. If these memories moved you, don't let the story end here. Leave a comment, join the conversation, and help us keep these voices alive. Subscribe for more journeys through time, and together, let's ensure these cities are never forgotten. See you next time.